The first humans arrived on these endless plains. They were hunter-gatherers, relentless and resourceful. Men and women who sprinted behind bison, elk, and wild horses across land that seemed to go on forever. Life was raw, life was fierce, and somehow, life was breathtakingly beautiful. The land of Mongolia pulsed with energy back then, teeming with animals, laced with rivers, and heavy with hope. These earliest people carved their stories into the walls of the Orkhon caves, paintings that still exist today, still crying out across the millennia with the full force of human meaning. Look at them and you don't see primitive scratchings. You see the world as it felt to be alive inside it. Over thousands of years, these first settlers split into smaller groups, each finding its own corner of this vast land. The volatile climate of Central Asia became their greatest teacher. It taught them how to move, how to adapt, how to read the sky, feel the wind, and interpret the behavior of animals. It taught them not merely to survive, but to truly, magnificently thrive. And there is all the difference in the world between those two things. The domestication of the horse, roughly 5,000 to 6,000 years ago, was no simple achievement. It was hard, dangerous, and slow. But it was done. And when it was done, the entire shape of the world changed. Distances that took weeks to cross collapsed into days. A tribe that possessed horses possessed power. In a land where most had nothing, those with horses were masters of everything they could see. By the first millennium BC, brilliant cultures like the Scythians and the great horse-riding peoples of what is now Mongolia and Kazakhstan had burst into full flower. These were not simple wanderers. They were artists, warriors, and merchants, sophisticated, disciplined, and wise. The first contacts between this region and China, Persia, and the Balkan Peninsula took shape in this very era. The trading routes that would one day be christened the Silk Road threaded directly through the Mongolian steppe, long before anyone thought to give them a name. Then in the 3rd century BC, the Xiongnu Empire rose from the Mongolian earth like a force of nature. These were the first true rulers of the steppe, and they were so terrifyingly powerful that they compelled the Chinese to build the Great Wall. Yes, that wall, that legendary, colossal structure that millions of people across the world recognize at a glance. It was built in direct response to these warriors. Let that sink in. The most famous architectural achievement in all of Chinese history exists because of Mongolia. That is not a footnote. That is a headline carved into the very bones of civilization. The Xiongnu held on for roughly 4 centuries. Then the baton passed to the early Turks, then the Uyghurs, then the Khitans. Each had their own stories, their own moments of glory, their own heartbreaking falls. But every single one of them shared something essential. They were nurturing the seeds of steppe culture. A culture that would one day ignite in the hands of one man and set half the world ablaze. Now we must speak of a man whose name every child on earth knows. A man whom some historians call the single most influential individual in the entire history of the human race. A man whose arrival meant this world would never, ever be the same again. The year was 1162, or perhaps 1155. Historians still argue. On the banks of the Onan River, in the far northeastern reaches of Mongolia, a woman named Hoelin gave birth to a child. His father was Yesugei Baghatur, chieftain of a small, unremarkable tribe. The child came into the world clutching a clot of blood in his tiny fist. The shamans of the tribe saw it and trembled. This, they said, is a sign something immense is coming. They named the boy Temujin. The early life of Temujin reads like a novel fate, wrote in its cruelest mood. His father was poisoned by enemies while the boy was still a child. His family was cast out of their tribe and abandoned in conditions that would have broken most people. He killed his own brother in a desperate act, fighting to lead his tiny, starving household. His wife, Borte, was kidnapped by enemies and taken into the dark. He himself was captured, put in chains, and humiliated. Through the 1180s and 1190s, Temujin began the monumental work of uniting the Mongol tribes, something no one in living memory had ever managed to pull off. The Mongolia of that era was a boiling cauldron of hostile clans: the Merkits, the Tatars, the Nomads, the Karayids. All of them locked in ceaseless, murderous conflict with one another. They had been tearing each other apart for generations. It was simply what they did. Through an astonishing combination of personal charisma, strategic brilliance, and calculated ruthlessness, he brought them to their knees, one by one, and then all at once. He offered loyalty and demanded it in return. He promoted men based on merit, not bloodline. He built something that had never existed on the steppe before, a unified people with a single identity and a single burning purpose. In 1206, at a great assembly on the banks of the Onan River, called a Kuriltai, the gathered tribes proclaimed Temujin by a name that rang across the sky like thunder: Genghis Khan, universal ruler, Khan of Khans. The man who had once been a prisoner in chains was now the sovereign of all Mongolia. The man who had once had nothing now had everything. But Genghis Khan was far, far more than a conqueror. He was an organizational genius of the very first order. The army he built was unlike anything the world had ever seen, and his enemies, when they faced it, frequently could not believe what was happening to them until it was already far too late. But Genghis Khan was far more than a conqueror. He was an organizational genius. The army he built was unlike anything the world had ever seen, and his enemies, when they faced it, could not believe what was happening until it was already far too late. The speed of the Mongol forces beggared the imagination of their opponents. In a single day, they could cover 70 to 100 kilometers, while conventional armies of the era considered 30 kilometers a good day's march. They had fast communication networks and complex intelligence systems, and most brilliantly of all, they learned. From every enemy they fought, they absorbed new knowledge. Siege warfare? Learn from the Chinese. Fire weapons? Learn from the Persians. The Mongols were not merely warriors. They were dedicated students of war. Within 2 decades of his coronation, Genghis Khan had conquered northern China. He swept through Central Asia. His armies reached Poland and Hungary. The Khwarezmian Empire, one of the most powerful states on earth at that time, was erased from the map in a matter of a few short years. Samarkand, Bukhara, Merv, Nishapur, cities that were each a glowing pearl of civilization, each a living monument to centuries of culture and learning and human achievement. They burned, they fell, they became ash and memory. His children and grandchildren carried his legacy to heights no human being has matched before or since. At the peak of their power, the Mongol Empire stretched from the Pacific Ocean in the east to Central Europe in the west, from frozen Siberia in the north to the warm Persian Gulf in the south. 33 million square kilometers. 1/4 of all the dry land on Earth, the largest contiguous empire in the history of the human race, never surpassed. In 1241, at the Battle of Legnica, the flower of European chivalry was crushed. Poland burned. Hungary was devastated. The kings of Europe wrote desperate letters to one another, prayed in their cathedrals, and drew up plans they had no idea how to execute. And then, without warning, the Mongols turned around and went home. Word had arrived that Agadi was dead, and the chiefs had to return east to choose a new great Khan. Europe exhaled with relief. Whether that relief was earned or merely borrowed from fate remains one of history's most haunting, unanswerable questions. Hulagu, another grandson of Genghis, drove westward with all the force of a gathering storm. In 1258, Baghdad, the capital of the Abbasid Caliphate, the city that for 5 centuries had been the beating heart of Islamic science, philosophy, and culture, fell. Libraries were hurled into the Tigris River. It is said the water ran black with the ink of 1,000 years of human knowledge. The last Abbasid caliph was killed. It was one of the darkest moments in the history of civilization. A wound so deep that scholars still mourn it today. But in that same year, 1260, something remarkable happened. At the Battle of Ain Jalut, in what is now Palestine, the Mamluks of Egypt did what no one had managed to do before. They defeated the Mongols. For the first time in living memory, the seemingly unstoppable tide had been stopped cold. It was a signal to the entire world, a reminder that every power, no matter how vast and fearsome, carries within itself the seeds of its own limitation. Among the most famous guests to ever walk through the gates of Kublai's palace was a young Venetian merchant named Marco Polo, whose breathless, wide-eyed accounts of what he witnessed there would ignite Europe's imagination about the mysterious, glittering East for centuries to come. Kublai attempted to conquer Japan twice, in 1274 and again in 1281. Both times, colossal typhoons swept in from the sea and obliterated his invasion fleets. The Japanese called these storms kamikaze, divine winds, sent by the gods themselves to protect their islands. Japan remains the only territory the Mongols ever truly wanted and could never take. Perhaps on rare and precious occasions, nature is simply mightier than human ambition. Empires, like human beings, are born, grow, reach their peak, and then grow old. The Mongol Empire was not exempt from this law. Its very greatness became its most dangerous enemy, holding together lands thousands of kilometers apart, inhabited by peoples of radically different languages, faiths, and traditions. This was a task that stretched even Mongol genius to its breaking point. After the collapse of the empire, Mongolia entered a long, painful era of fragmentation. The old cycle of tribal warfare, the very cycle Genghis had broken, resumed with quiet inevitability. In the 17th century, the Qing dynasty of China took a far more patient approach than any military force before. Through strategic alliances and political marriages, they absorbed the Mongol tribes one by one. By 1691, even Outer Mongolia, the territory we know today simply as Mongolia, had submitted to Qing rule. 200 years passed under the shadow of the Qing. The Mongols kept what they could: their language, their culture, their horses, but their power was gone. What sustained them through these difficult decades was something quiet but indestructible: Tibetan Buddhism, which had taken root in Mongolia in the 16th century. Monasteries became sanctuaries of learning, art, and literature. The great monastery of Gandan in Ulaanbaatar became the spiritual heart of a nation waiting, without knowing it was waiting for its moment to return. The 20th century arrived in Mongolia like an earthquake that spared nothing and left nothing untouched. When the Qing dynasty collapsed in China in 1911, the Mongols seized their moment with both hands and everything they had. In December of that year, the Genghis Khan, religious leader and political figurehead of Mongolia, declared independence. A flag was raised, and entire people held their breath. The 20th century arrived in Mongolia like an earthquake that spared nothing. When the Qing dynasty collapsed in China in 1911, the Mongols seized their moment. In December that year, the Genghis Khan, religious leader and political figurehead, declared independence. A flag was raised. An entire people held their breath. 70 years under the vast gray shadow of socialism. For Mongolia, it was a time of deep contradiction. On one hand, real progress. Literacy rates climbed dramatically, healthcare improved, urbanization expanded. Ulaanbaatar grew into a genuine capital city. On the other hand, terror. In the 1930s, under Stalin's influence, Mongolia's leader Choibal San unleashed sweeping purges. Thousands of Buddhist monks and intellectuals were killed or imprisoned. Monasteries were demolished. Gandan, the spiritual heart of the nation, was nearly destroyed completely. The silence that fell over those sacred grounds was a silence of grief, not peace. And yet, through every dark year of it, the Mongols remained Mongols. Even in the worst seasons of repression, they held on to what mattered most. Their language lived. Their traditions lived. Nadam, the great festival of the three manly sports, wrestling, horse racing, and archery, was never ever extinguished. Some things, it turns out, are simply stronger and more enduring than any ideology that human beings have ever invented. When the Soviet Union began to crumble, a wave of transformation rolled across Central Asia, but Mongolia chose to be an exception. In the bitter winter of 1989 to 1990, students and intellectuals gathered in Ulaanbaatar. In temperatures plunging to -40 degrees, they stood in Sukbatar Square and demanded democracy. They stood, they waited, they refused to leave, without a single drop of blood being shed, without a single shot being fired. The government stepped down. Free elections were held. A new constitution was written. Mongolia became a democracy, and it did so with a grace and a quiet dignity that most of the world has never paused long enough to notice or to properly honor. Without a single drop of blood being shed, without a single shot being fired, the government stepped down. Free elections were held. A new constitution was written. Mongolia became a democracy, and did so with a grace and quiet dignity that most of the world has never paused long enough to notice. Mongolia today stands at the intersection of two realities, two different time zones of human experience. On one side, traditions thousands of years old. The ger, the traditional circular tent still home to many. The Nadam festival, celebrated every summer with joy that must be witnessed to be believed, and the spirit of nomadism still running warm through Mongolian blood. On the other side, modernity arriving with breathtaking speed. Ulaanbaatar, home to roughly 45% of Mongolia's 3 million people, is a city unlike any other on Earth. On one side, gleaming towers of glass and steel climbing toward an impossibly blue sky. On the other, the Gyar districts, thousands of traditional tents arranged around the city's edges, their stovepipes sending thin wisps of smoke into the cold air. People who grew up riding horses across open plains now scroll through Instagram and stream their favorite shows. The contrast is not jarring, it is magnificent. Mongolia's economy has been transformed by the discovery of colossal mineral wealth beneath its ancient soil. Vast reserves of coal, copper, gold, and rare earth minerals lie waiting. The Oyu Tolgoi mine in the Gobi Desert, one of the largest copper and gold mines on the planet, is a symbol of both the promise and the peril this wealth brings. Rapid economic growth, but dangerous dependency on global commodity prices and serious environmental concerns that cannot be wished away. Squeezed between Russia and China, two of the most powerful nations the world has ever seen, Mongolia pursues what it calls its third neighbor policy, maintaining strong, meaningful relationships with America, Europe, Japan, and South Korea to create a counterbalance against the gravitational pull of its two enormous neighbors. It is a policy of elegant, hard-won intelligence, exactly the kind of strategic brilliance you might expect from a nation that once governed a quarter of the entire Earth. These hardships drive what Mongolians call the city migration. Each year, thousands of nomadic families who have lost their herds arrive in Ulaanbaatar with nothing but the clothes on their backs. The city strains to receive them. The Gar districts expand. In winter, smoke from thousands of coal-burning stoves fills the valley in a choking haze, making Ulaanbaatar one of the most polluted cities on Earth during the cold months. In the central square of Ulaanbaatar, a great stone statue of Genghis Khan sits upon his throne, his granite gaze fixed on the horizon. Every day, thousands of Mongolians pass by him, some in traditional dress, some in modern suits, some with phones in hand, some with children tugging at their sleeves. Tourists photograph him with something close to reverence, and sometimes, just sometimes, a Mongolian passing by will glance up at that stone face, and something will flicker behind their eyes. Something without a word in any language. Something only a people who carry this history in their blood could possibly feel. The story of Mongolia is the story of contradiction made magnificent. A people who built the greatest empire the world has ever known, and were then themselves conquered, who lived for centuries as nomads and are now racing toward modernity, who are heirs to one of history's most fearsome military traditions, yet led one of the most peaceful revolutions the 20th century produced. You will not find another story like it, anywhere. But if there is one lesson that the history of Mongolia gives us, one truth that rises above all the battles and all the empires and all the turning centuries, it is this: the winds of the steppe never stop blowing. This people has been brought to its knees again and again, under Qing domination, under socialist repression, under the grinding weight of economic hardship. And every single time, they have risen. They kept their language, they kept their traditions, they kept their horses, and they kept that spirit, that fierce, undimmed, unbreakable spirit of a people who were born to ride with the wind and who have never, not once, been truly afraid of the horizon. Mongolia has a future still being written. This nation, small in population but immense in history, stands on the threshold of transformations that could make it once again a genuine actor on the world stage. If its mineral wealth is managed wisely, if its young population is given real opportunity, if the wisdom of its extraordinary past is brought to bear on the challenges of its present. The next chapter of this ancient story may be the most astonishing yet, because in the end, when the sun finally sinks behind the peaks of the Altai Mountains, and the great steppe folds itself into silence and starlight. What remains is the spirit of a people who were born on horseback and raised in the arms of the storm.